Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and this is going to be a video about my new diagnosis that I just got. I just wrote a blog post on my website that is all about how I got this diagnosis, my journey from when I started having back pain about 10 years ago, and the various times I talked to my doctors about it till now. But I also needed a video for this week, and I wanted to tell you all about it because if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, you probably prefer video content. So I have talked about my pain on here before. I did a video a while ago about the different methods I use to handle my pain. So like my TENS unit and heating pads and medication. I don't think I mentioned in that one that I've also started using ice as well as heat. And that works pretty well. And so my pain is primarily to do with the spine. It definitely always feels like it's in the middle of my back rather than the outsides, although it can sometimes sort of radiate out. But when it does, it's always bilateral, so I can kind of tell that it's coming from the center of my back, and it's all along the spine. There's definitely some extra down around my sacrum and lumbar regions. That's the sort of bottom part, and where the spine meets the hips. But I do have quite a bit in my upper back and also my neck as well. And there are like lots of different chronic illnesses that can cause pain, but there's not that many that focus on the spine. And so far I have had a really hard time researching, and my two different primary care providers have not been able to come up with something that zeroes in on the spine like that. The first one didn't really try, but the second one kind of did. But then one day recently I was Googling to myself. Actually I was Ecosia-ing because that's the one I use most of the time now. I specifically searched sacrum pain because on that particular day it was really low, and looking at pictures of skeletons online, and I was like, okay, so that area is actually more the sacrum than the lumbar spine. It's between the lumbar spine and the coccyx, which is also known as the tailbone. And the sacroiliac joints are where the sacrum attaches to your hips. So it was right around the sacrum where I was feeling this pain. So I finally searched that, which I hadn't searched before, and came up with something called ankylosing spondylitis, which is a chronic illness that is very much centered around the spine. It can sometimes have involve other joints, but for a lot of people it is very much centered on the spine, and specifically on the sacrum and the joints around the sacrum. And so I was very excited to have found something that fits my symptoms. But I was also nervous about bringing it up to the doctor because I have heard a lot about doctors referring to patients finding their own diagnosis this way as Dr. Googling, and are very derisive about it and dismissive of it. So I didn't bring it up directly. I kind of brought up the class of things that it falls under, which is rheumatoid issues, in that it's not the same as rheumatoid arthritis, but it is a rheumatological issue in that it is a autoimmune disease. And so my doctor listed a few things that it probably wasn't, and also brought up ankylosing spondylitis, and said she thought that probably wasn't it because that usually, according to her, usually affects the outer limbs as well. And also it's very rare. But I was able to convince her to do a blood test that looks for a specific marker. That means you have a specific gene that is highly related to AS, as well as an inflammation test, which just looks at the general inflammation in your body. I don't know how that works. And then x-rays of my lumbar and cervical spine, so my neck and my lower back, because we had only done x-rays of my upper back before. I got a call a few days after the x-rays that there was osteoarthritis on my lumbar region, and that the doctor would be calling later that day to discuss a diet plan with me. you can imagine my feelings about that. In addition to all the science that says that actually the reason that fat people have worse health outcomes than straight-sized people is because of fat phobia, there's also the general experience within the chronic illness community of doctors refusing to look into things until you're skinny. And maybe not even then. But if you are not straight-sized, they will especially not look into anything. So I was upset all day, and then the call came, and the doctor was much more polite about it, but when I tried to redirect her and ask for other tests about, like, why does this 27-year-old have osteoarthritis, other than my being what the fat community considers mid-size, and she would not be redirected. So that was very upsetting. But I had my mom call the next day. My mom is my social anxiety, what would you call that? Paladin. She goes in and does the things I'm too socially anxious to do for me. Very much appreciate that. So she called the next day and asked for a rheumatology referral. And so we found a rheumatologist who was accepting new patients, which was an ARNP. I got the referral. So that was okay. That was very good, actually. And we got an appointment for about 2 months later, and that appointment was earlier this week. Oh, and after I got the referral, between then and the appointment, I got the blood test back, which said I did have the gene, and I also have extremely lot of inflammation just floating around in my body. And so when I got to this appointment, I really didn't know what she was going to say. She didn't give me the diagnosis right away. She did a bunch of tests and took my whole history first, which makes sense. But I was also nervous the whole time that she was just going to dismiss it. And so I was really stressing out through the whole appointment. But then she said that because of the marker in my blood and my health history, and it meant that I had ankylosing spondylitis. She gave me a handout on it, which was right there to the side. It's like there were 5 folders sitting there in the room, and one of them was about spondylitis, which is the more general umbrella that AS is under. And she gave me a prescription for a more powerful NSAID, which is the first line of treatment for AS. And she ordered more x-rays, specifically of my sacroiliac joints. And she told me that if there is any beginning of bone fusion there, which AS is a disease that, as it progresses, will fuse parts of the spine, starting with usually the sacroiliac joints, that she will recommend going on an immunosuppressant, which I know is a scary medication, but not doing anything about my pain is scarier. I was really grateful for that. And she said that the osteoarthritis is almost certainly caused by the inflammation, and that AS doesn't just cause bone fusion, but it causes inflammation that attacks the entire spine, and it doesn't always show up on x-rays when it's just at the inflammation stage, and that inflammation can cause my upper back pain that I'm experiencing, as well as inflammation will cause osteoarthritis if left untreated. So that was really a really good appointment, and left me emotionally exhausted for the rest of the day. But I'm very, very happy to have a diagnosis and to have a doctor who's going to treat it. And then I did some more research on my own and found out that it's actually not that rare of a thing. 1% of Americans have spondylitis in general, and about half of those, so 0.5%, have specifically ankylosing spondylitis. And they talked about how most people who have it go at least 5 years searching for a diagnosis before they get one. I probably started pushing for a diagnosis when I got my new doctor, so that was about 5 to 6 or 7 years ago. Whereas my symptoms, like I said, started 10 years ago. So most of the stuff for how I'll be managing my pain is going to be the same, except for this new NSAID. I'm still experimenting with it. So far, I have gotten a little bit worse in my pain for taking it for a few days. So I'm going to see about what we can do about that. My comments are a safe place to talk about your own chronic illness experiences if you would like to. But I also just appreciate you all being here and listening to my emotional little story. If you'd like to leave an emoji, how about a flower? I'll see you in the next video. Bye.